and welcome in the name of our rock and our salvation. For our guests this morning, I am Reverend Corrine Boroff. It is my joy and privilege to be able to welcome you and to also offer the message this morning. If you are a guest with us this morning, I invite you to stop by our welcome station as you come in, where you received a bulletin or a program this morning. There is a gift for you. And if you know of a guest with us this morning, feel free to offer them one of those gifts. If you are a guest with us online, please register with us, and we'll make sure that you get that gift in the mail. We fulfill our mission to make disciples for Jesus Christ by following our pathway, living our faith, nurturing families, serving our communities. Monday, the United Methodist Church denomination, we are meeting to discuss the situation and changes that our sister churches that are disaffiliating are facing. There will be an opportunity to learn about what is happening within the United Methodist denomination. Actually, nothing with the denomination, but those churches that are disaffiliating, how that affects us. That will be Monday at 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in the sanctuary downtown. So please come and join. It's a district-wide event. Our superintendent will be present. He will be the one that will be organizing and facilitating this conversation. He will also be the one to answer questions that you have during that time. So this is an important opportunity, so please come and join the congregation and the district and our denomination to learn more and get some questions answered. As one of our own, Juanita, and I'll reserve the right to withhold her last name, but one of ours has suffered an extreme loss in a fire, a house fire that consumed everything within the fire and also the house itself. So she's lost everything. She said it's 50 years of life that she's lost. So it's devastating and overwhelming to her. If you are interested in offering a monetary donation to assist Juanita, we will collect that at the church. And as she begins to kind of reestablish herself, we'll present her with a gift, the check from us, so that she can have that money to go toward that. The current needs right now are being satisfied. If you'd like to bring any kind of donation, we're collecting those, but also cards, gift cards. She said they would prefer fast food and also gift cards from Meijer, Walmart, and Dollar General. So those can be left at the church, and she is periodically coming by to pick those up. So anything that you can offer, please do keep her in your prayers. She also had a granddaughter and great-grandson that were living with her, and the boyfriend, so please remember all of them as they've all lost everything. During our time of greeting, we are reminded that God welcomes us wholeheartedly, and we extend those greetings to one another. If you have already begun your time of prayer and you wish to remain in an attitude of prayer, simply remain seated and keep the attitude of prayer, and the rest of us then will stand in body and spirit and greet one another with the joy of knowing Jesus Christ. Let us greet one another. Arrows of the Almighty are bringing our music this morning, and just the titles were not in the bulletin, so I'll share those with you. Even then, the titles are Even Then, Faithful God, God is in the Story, and Firm Foundation. So let us now be led by Arrows of the Almighty as we center our hearts for worship.
On the nights when the dark lasts a little bit longer, when the wind and the storm is a little bit stronger, when the fear in my heart dips a little bit deeper, when my faith to stand gets a little bit weaker, where could I run to? Where could I go? Even when it feels like my world is shaking, even when I've had all that I can take, I know you'll never let me go. Whoa. And even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of night, I know no matter how it ends, you're with me even then. When the days up ahead look a little bit brighter, but the grip of the past holds a little bit tighter, I'm reminded your grace never asked for perfection. Oh, I'm restored 'cause I'm yours and I stand forgiven. Yeah. Even when it feels like my world is shaking, even when I've had all that I can take, I know you'll never let me go. Oh, and even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of night, I know no matter how it ends, you're with me even then. And even in the middle of a struggle, and even when it's hard to remember, you alone are my defense. When I'm standing on your promises, and I know that even in the thick of the battle, and even through the valley of the shadows, you alone are my defense. When I'm standing on your promises, so where could I run to? Where could I go? Even when it feels like my world is shaking, even when I've had all that I can take, I know you'll never let me go. Oh, even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of night, I know no matter how it ends, you're with me even then. Ooh, no matter how it ends.
Please stand for our call to worship this morning, and remain standing for our first hymn. We gather as God's beloved children. However glad we are, however out of sorts we are. We come together as a people whom Jesus calls into community. So this becomes a place where all are welcome. We have come to give thanks, to pray and sing, and to be with others. Let us worship God.
What a fellowship
Hey, kiddos, come on up. Would you come around this way so we don't have to go in between the microphones? We're going to come all the way over here. Come on over, Nora. You want to help me? Come here. I'm going to need some help. So we have a story today, a Bible story today, about a lady who had kind of a bitter life. She had lots of bad things happen to her. Her name was Naomi. And Naomi had to move to another place. She had to leave her home and move to another place. And when she got to this other place, her husband died and her son died, and she had kind of a bitter life. Do you know what bitter means? What does bitter mean? Somebody?
Talking about the one about food, it's like something that it's sort of like not sour and not sweet. It's like,
Does it taste yummy?
no, not really.
Well, I have some lemonade here, and it's going to help us see a little bit how bitter tastes. Okay, are you ready? Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Oh gosh, here we go. I'm just going to give you just a little bit. Well, you may not. Don't drink it yet. Don't drink it yet. Okay, Mason, here's yours. Hold on. I know it's hot. Lemonade's going to taste pretty yummy, don't you think? Outside. Out. I hope the lemonade's not hot. Okay, Caroline, Leland. Okay, Nora, you're next. Okay, wait a minute. I gotta give Nora hers. Are you ready? Let's see. Let's see how it tastes. Okay, Nora, just giving you a little bit. You guys ready to give it a taste? Let's see what it tastes like. Is it yummy or not? What do you think? Ooh, is it kind of gross? It has no sugar in it. Well, you know what?
Lemon juice.
Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna water the flowers real quick. Grace, hold on to your cup. We're gonna water the flowers. Here we go.
I thought you were actually giving us lemonade.
Hold on. So that's kind of what bitter tastes like. And Naomi's life was kind of bitter. But you know what? God sent somebody to Naomi to make her life a whole lot sweeter. Her name was Ruth. And Ruth came into Naomi's life. That's how much the package says to put in, by the way. I'm following the directions, just so you know. So Naomi came into Ruth's life, and she was her friend, and she helped her, and she was kind. And so Naomi added some sweet kindness to Ruth's life. So you guys ready to try this one? Let's see what a little bit of sweet kindness does. Okay, we're going to start with Nora first. Hold it tight, Nora. Got it? There you go. Okay, hold on tight, Leland. You can go ahead and taste this one and tell me if it's better. Tell me if this one tastes. Oh, it is? It tastes better now? Let's see. What do you think? Does everybody think it's better now? A lot sweeter. You know, we all have hard times. We all have bitter things that happen. Maybe a pet dies, or your best friend moves away, or you don't get the teacher that you really wanted. But God gives us sweet friends to make the bitter times of life better. So I want you to remember that. And here's the other thing I want you to remember. I want you guys to be sweet friends to other people so that their lives can be better. Okay, here's your bags. Are you ready to head back? You can head back. Here you go. Head back to your seats. You might want to go around. There you go, guys. Got it, Leland? There you go, sweet girl.
Let us offer our thanks to God and dedicate our offerings to Him. Almighty God, your promises are sure. You are faithful. We can rely on you. Your word says that we will find joy in offering our time and our talents and our money to meet the needs of others. Help us to freely give. Help us to sacrificially give and joyfully give towards the work of your kingdom. May you cause the seeds that we sow to grow into well-watered, fruitful trees of life. Lord, bless us and keep us through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
I am surrounded on every side, can't see the light of day, but I am persuaded beyond all hope you won't let go of me. I stake my claim on every word you say. You will not be late. I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, you are a faithful God. You're faithful, God. The darkest of weather, though I can't see, I still believe you're good. So I'm moving forward through crashing waves. I know I'm safe with you. You hold my life, you hear my cry with every breath inside. I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, you are a faithful God. That's what you are. You are a faithful God. I am convinced that your promises will hold together, and I will dwell in the hope of your love forever. I am convinced that your promises will hold together, and I will dwell in your love. And I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, you are a faithful God. That's what you are. Oh, you are a faithful God. Oh, that's faithful God.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Dearest Christ, Lord of life and hope, we gather this day seeking guidance for our thoughts, for our actions and spirit. We like directions, Lord. In fact, we want an owner's manual, a guidebook, a how-to guide for our faith. Rules and regulations, time constraints seem to dominate our lives, and we forget the most basic understanding for our faith, and that is our relationship to God through you. God has drawn us here this day to be healed, to listen, to recognize the needs of others, and to be encouraged in our service to God's world. We now lift up to you, Lord, the names of dear ones who struggle with a host of issues and situations over which we and they feel powerless. Our hearts are heavy for those who are victims of senseless gun violence just down the street or around the world. Help us to seek our pathway in changing the tide from this disastrous use of firearms. And remind us again that your power is sufficient for the needs of all. May broken and grieving, angry and burdened hearts all experience your loving care. Help us to place our trust and confidence in you as not only the foundation of our faith, but the bedrock of our lives. And encourage us to think and act outside ourselves so that we all may experience the fullness of the life you have gifted us. Now, as people united by Christ, we now pray as Christ taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
There's torn up pages in this book, words that tell me I'm no good, chapters that define me for so long. But the hands of grace and endless love dusted off and picked me up, told me my heart hope is never gone. God is in the story. God is in the details, even in the broken parts. He holds my heart. He never fails. When I'm at my weakest, I will trust in Jesus. Always in the highs and lows, the one who goes before me. God is in this story. So if the storm you're walking through feels like it's too much for you, wonder if he even cares at all. Well, hold on tight to what you know. He promised he won't let you go. Your song of healing's written in his scars. God is in the story. God is in the details, even in the broken parts. He holds my heart. He never fails. When I'm at my weakest, I will trust in Jesus. Always in the highs and lows, the one who goes before me. God is in this story. If it reads like addiction, if it reads like disease, he's the one who frees the prisoner. He's the healer of all things. If it reads like depression, if it reads a broken home, he's the one who holds your sorrow. He won't leave you here alone. God is in the story. God is in the details, even in the broken parts. He holds my heart. He never fails. When I'm at my weakest, I will trust in Jesus.
morning. Today we have three scripture readings today, and the first one is from Psalms 11, 1 through 7. I trust in the Lord for protection. So why do you say to me, fly like a bird to the mountains for safety? The wicked are stringing their bows and fitting their arrows on the bowstrings. They shoot from the shadows at the upright in heart. So if the foundations of law and order have collapsed, what can the righteous do? But the Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord still rules from heaven. He watches everyone closely, examining every person on earth. The Lord examines both the righteous and the wicked. He hates those who love violence. He will rain down blazing coals and burning sulfur on the wicked, punishing them with scorching winds. For the righteous Lord loves justice. The virtuous will see his face. Our second reading is from Psalms 118, 19 through 24. Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord. The righteous shall enter through it. I thank you that you have answered me and have become my salvation. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Our final reading comes from Acts 4, 11 and 12. For Jesus is the one referred to in the scriptures where it says, the stone that you builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. There is salvation in no one else. God has given no other name under heaven by which we must be saved. This is God's word for God's people today. Thanks be to God.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. His oath, his covenant, his blood support me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand.
It is wonderful to be here.
it will be wonderful to be heard. I'm so glad to be here with you. I just have to share, just take a personal moment. I come to you and I have to confess, I have a couple notes here in case I look away. And I am totally sleep deprived and have my 4-year-old granddaughter with me this morning. We had twins that were born a couple days ahead of schedule. And so at midnight on Friday evening, I traveled to Indianapolis and have been with Nora since. The twins were born happy and healthy, strong, everybody's doing well. They were born at about 3 a.m. And then we spent the day, Nora and I, up at the hospital meeting the new babies and have been on the go ever since. So even, it's amazing how much endurance a 4-year-old has, even late at night. So I remembered it during this time, especially this morning, I remembered why my pattern of getting up, having raised 3 children, while I was in ministry, getting up at 4 a.m. and leaving the house before they awoke has been my strategy, and I've kept that pattern up for many, many years. I get it now. It reinforced why that became a pattern. Obviously, this morning it was very, very different. Had my helper all the way along. So I appreciate you bearing with me and also celebrating with me. Thank you. Well, this morning as we talk about foundation, I want to share a story with you. It completely collapsed. All 13 stories of the building completely collapsed. All the homes, there were 136 living units, all the homes in this condominium, and many lives, 98 to be exact, were destroyed. 98 people died in the collapse. This actually happened just about a year ago in Surfside, Florida. This condominium, the Champlain Towers South, were the ones that collapsed. And the Wall Street Journal did a report and came to the conclusion in all the findings that were done that followed the Surfside tragedy, came to the conclusion some interesting facts about the cause of this. You see, the actual cause of this destruction that was experienced was a faulty foundation. And in the report, they itemized several things that had not happened or had happened too little. The first conclusion that they made, though, out of their report was that there had been too little concrete around the rebar and too little rebar in the concrete in other places. That the strong support walls, there were not enough of them constructed and included. And also the waterproofing on the concrete that would have come into contact with salt water, it had not been waterproofed, and so that concrete had eroded away. Now also in the report were these items that during that time when it was constructed in the 70s, that these were legal things that were done. It was okay to do what they did. It was acceptable. The other conclusion was all the things could have been repaired. Even though those things had taken place, didn't have to end in destruction. It was because any kind of warning sign that was kind of flaring up, like the facing on the roof of different structures within the condominium began to kind of fall away. And they began to find a few cracks that they patched those. But it really didn't get to the foundation. It didn't get to the reason why this devastation took place. And you see the fact that it was acceptable. It was okay to do those things. I mean, nobody noticed. Everybody was okay with it. But the consequences of what had happened, the consequences of the decisions made, were devastating. They destroyed life. Big time. 98 people, their lives ended that day. All because of those decisions made. It's interesting that we're talking about this kind of foundation, because you think, well, that's a really sad story, Pastor, but what does that have to do with us? Other than we're just going to avoid the Surfside condominiums right now, right? Until they make sure they get everything under perfection, checked. But it has a whole lot to do with us, because you see, our God chose to use the term foundation, rock, cornerstone. Throughout Scripture, it begins in Genesis and it goes clear through. I found terms for a rock used clear in 1 Peter. Many hundreds of references to those throughout Scripture. There's a very important reason that God talks about the rock and the foundation. It's because it has to do with our relationship to our God. Whether we allow God to be our foundation, our rock, or not. And you might think, Pastor, I'm in church, I'm watching online, I worship, I do what I'm supposed to do, I read my scripture, kind of. I'm doing okay. I don't have to worry about this. This is for somebody else. There's a scene in a movie, again, this movie was actually made about the time that the Surfside Towers were built. Interesting. Harrison Ford and Robert Shaw were the two that starred in this movie. And it's a war movie. It's about soldiers. Those two are the good guys in the movie, and they're battling the Nazis. And this particular scene takes place in Yugoslavia, where they were the head of a team that was to go in and destroy a bridge. The movie itself is called the Force 10 of Navarone. They were to go in and they were to blow up a bridge. Well, not having any way to know what they were walking into, they got there and discovered they had this much dynamite to blow up a bridge when they needed this much dynamite to blow up the bridge. They didn't have enough. So game over, right? Defeat. Hardly. They had an explosives expert with them who gave them some direction. And what they decided to do, they got a hold of some Nazi uniforms. They worked their way up the river right in the midst of all the Nazis that were around this area. And they got to the dam upriver. And when they got to the dam, following the instructions that they had been given, they went into the dam and they placed their small amount of explosives inside the dam. Well, it was enough that those rest of their team that was down near the bridge watching and listening could hear the explosion. Nothing happened. Game over, right? Done. And so, they had enough time. They got back out. They found their explosives expert, who was leisurely sitting out of harm's way and said, "Oh, you have to be patient." And sure enough, the dam slowly began to show cracks and more cracks until the complete dam completely fell into itself, and the water came rushing down the river and took out the bridge. But folks, most of the time, I mean, if you have a home and you have an inspection, most of the time that we walk around our structures, our physical structures that we have, we don't notice a crack here or some plaster that's falling off of there. We don't really notice or pay attention until it's too late. It takes time. It takes time in our lives. And the foundations that we are talking about are our individual lives or the foundation of our church. God is the foundation of both. And it takes time to see where there have been things destroyed, barricades placed between our relationship and God. Hopefully not till it's too late. But we don't want to wait till it's too late. We want to make sure that we are aware of where we need to do the repairs. Because it can be repaired. Our relationship with God can be repaired. God offers us the gift of forgiveness. In Psalm 11, this psalm is a song of trust, a song of faith, a song of confidence in God. And it's during what would have taken place, was written during one of the most severe crises that David faced. Scholars say that this psalm was probably written by David when King Saul, David wasn't quite the acknowledged king yet, and Saul was determined to kill him. And yet we have this psalm of trust and faith and confidence in God. You know, most of the time when I question God's presence with me, God's care for me, God's provision for me, most of the time when my trust wavers, it's because I'm going through something I don't think I deserve. I'm going through something that's hard. Going through something that doesn't seem right at all. There's even been a time in my life where I questioned God and said, "God, why have you betrayed me? I've tried to do everything I can do that I thought you wanted me to do, and here I am." But it wasn't God. And I am so grateful that I had gone to God in that time and asked God to repair my foundation in Him. Because you see, if that had just been let go, the next time the cracks would have gotten deeper and wider, and the separation would have been more. Scripture refers to God as our rock. Oftentimes, scholars will say that the rock in the Old Testament, while it refers to our God, specifically refers to Christ. And that comes through a connection between this passage that we saw in Psalm 18 and Acts 4. Those passages talk about the cornerstone. That's the stone that is placed that actually navigates the foundation of an entire structure. That's what the cornerstone was originally used for. Now it's kind of seen as a plaque. But the cornerstone was actually, it was responsible for setting the course of the whole structure that was built around it. Jesus is that cornerstone. Jesus is our rock. Growing up, I had an affinity for rocks. My parents were so glad when I got married. I thought it was really funny during the receiving line. I mean, they're coming out of the sanctuary and they looked at my then husband and said, "Tim, we're so glad that you have her now. Now you can move her rocks." We moved a lot. Dad was a United Methodist pastor, and we moved a lot, and I did. I had boxes of rocks. Loved them. And that probably started when I was in kindergarten. We lived in New Jersey. Dad was in seminary, went to seminary at Drew University in New Jersey. He was serving 2 churches at the time. We had a beautiful, as I remember as a child, a beautiful parsonage set on top of a mountain. Literally, the mountain crested. You could see below us the foothills beyond us. You could see the outer limits of New York City. Outer limits. In that parsonage, in that yard, was my favorite place in the whole world. And we affectionately, I named it Ship Rock. This rock became everything again, as a young child, kindergartner, probably wasn't that big, but to me it was mammoth. And it had just enough of a slope. It was a fully exposed rock, and it had enough of a slope that I could scramble up on top of it. And it became my house. It became my ship. It became my horse. It became whatever I needed it to be. It became my safe place. Nothing could get me on my rock. And so when I think of God as my rock, my foundation, I think of that. And Scripture holds that true. The rock in Scripture is a safe place. It's a firm foundation. It is security. And interestingly as well, the rock, our God, isn't an immobile being, uninvolved, stationary being. It is also a life-giving rock. God told Moses in the wilderness, in order for the people to have water, that he struck the rock and outpoured life-giving water from the rock. God provides. God cares as the firm foundation for our lives. So how do we do that? How are we sure? Scripture tells us, David tells us in our psalm that we're to take refuge in our God. And notice, the righteous are to take refuge in our God. You and I, brothers and sisters, those of us who believe in and who follow and who work hard to try to live as God would have us live, those who are aware of God being a part of this world, the righteous. David says in the psalm, the righteous can't fix this. Only God can. But we can point one another to God. So you and I should be connected to one another. Serve together, work together, have fellowship together, pray together, study scripture together. We can't fix it, no matter how many of us gather together. But we can help each other identify those cracks in our foundation before they sneak up on us and become fatal. The cracks in our firm foundation is something we need to pay attention to. God's not cracking. We are. We are placing those separations between ourselves and God. I invite you to join me in our response this morning. Lord, you are my rock and my strength. You alone support me through all things in life. Help me to rely upon you even more, so that I may daily accomplish all that you call me to do. Jesus, I trust in you.
When the threat of darkness has come breaking in, and the force of fear blows like a violent wind, when confusion strikes in clouds of chaos, hey, I know that my heart cannot be held by circumstance, for my eyes are locked on the God who sees the end. So when this world around me cries out, who
has created in you and for you a firm foundation that will never, ever waver. Look for Christ. Amen.